Why would a woman who is intelligent, attractive, independent, and emotionally capable choose to live without a husband or boyfriend? To many people, it doesn't make sense. They assume she must be waiting for someone. Maybe she's afraid of commitment. Maybe she hasn't found the right person. And maybe she's secretly lonely, but sometimes none of those explanations are true. Sometimes she simply doesn't believe that being in a relationship is automatically better than being alone. And that distinction changes everything. The Sigma female archetype is often associated with women who are comfortable walking their own path. They can want love without needing a relationship to validate their existence. They can enjoy intimacy without sacrificing their independence. And they can live alone without experiencing solitude as a punishment. But what actually happens psychologically when a woman becomes genuinely comfortable being alone? Why might she reject relationships that other people would consider good enough? And why can finding the right partner become harder, not easier, the more independent she becomes? Today, we're exploring the real psychology behind why some Sigma females choose to live alone without a husband or boyfriend. And the answer goes much deeper than simply saying she doesn't need a man. Let's begin. This is the first distinction most people miss. Being alone and being lonely are not the same psychological experience. Loneliness is the feeling that you lack meaningful connection. Solitude is simply the absence of other people. For the Sigma female, solitude can actually be restorative. She can wake up without checking whether someone is texting her. She can eat dinner alone, spend an entire weekend doing her own thing, travel by herself, read, work, create, think, and still feel completely satisfied with her life. That doesn't mean she never wants companionship. It means companionship isn't required for her to feel whole. This changes her relationship with dating. She's no longer asking, who will choose me? She's asking, does this person genuinely improve the life I've already built? And if the answer is no, being alone becomes the better option. The more comfortable someone becomes alone, the less willing they tend to be to tolerate relationships that consistently disturb their peace. The Sigma female isn't necessarily searching for a perfect partner, she's looking for compatibility. Can they communicate honestly? Can they respect boundaries? Can they handle disagreement without turning everything into a war? Can they support her ambitions? Can she be herself around them? Can they provide emotional stability rather than constant uncertainty? These questions matter because she already knows what life feels like without relationship drama. If a relationship creates more stress than happiness, why would she choose it? This is where outsiders sometimes misunderstand her. They see a woman who rejects several potential partners and think she's too picky. But from her perspective, she's simply refusing to exchange peace for companionship. She would rather wait for something healthy than enter something merely because she's afraid of being alone. This is perhaps the biggest psychological difference. Some people build their lives around relationships. The Sigma female may build relationships around the life she already has. She develops her own routines, her career, her hobbies, her friendships, her goals, her interests, her personal identity. So when a relationship ends, her entire world doesn't collapse. She still has a life. And this can create an unusual level of emotional independence. She doesn't wake up thinking, what am I without a partner? She already knows. She's herself. This doesn't make relationships meaningless. In fact, it can make healthy relationships more meaningful. Because when she chooses someone, she's not choosing them because she has nothing. She's choosing them because she genuinely wants them. There's an enormous psychological difference between I need you and I choose you. There's another reason some women remain single longer than expected. They stop caring about the social timeline. Society often creates an invisible checklist. Date, fall in love, get engaged, get married, buy a house, have children. And for many people, that's exactly the life they want. There's nothing wrong with that. But the Sigma female may ask a different question. Do I actually want this, or do I want it because I'm expected to? That question can completely change someone's life. She may look at her friends getting married and genuinely be happy for them, but she doesn't automatically interpret their choices as instructions for her own life. She doesn't believe another person's timeline has to become hers. Maybe she marries at 25, maybe 35, maybe 45. Maybe she never marries. The point isn't the number. The point is that she wants the decision to be hers, not society's. Independence can become incredibly valuable once you've experienced it. The Sigma female may love having control over her time. She decides where she goes, how she spends her evenings, what goals she pursues, where she lives, how she manages her money. She doesn't have to negotiate every decision. She doesn't have to explain every part of her day. She doesn't have to constantly adjust herself to another person's expectations. And once someone becomes deeply comfortable with that freedom, giving it up requires a very good reason. This doesn't mean she fears commitment. It means she doesn't see commitment as the opposite of freedom. The right relationship should create partnership, not ownership. She doesn't want someone who says, "You can't do that because you're with me." She wants someone who says, "How can I support what matters to you?" That's why an independent woman can sometimes remain single for years. Not because nobody wants her, but because very few relationships offer enough value to justify the loss of autonomy she fears. And when she finally meets someone who understands that, her perspective on relationships can change completely. There is a difference between being a loving partner and becoming responsible for another adult's emotional stability. The Sigma female may be deeply empathetic. She can listen, support, encourage, comfort. But she doesn't want a relationship where she has to constantly regulate another person's emotions. She doesn't want to spend every day wondering, is he upset with me? How do I fix his mood? Why is he acting distant? What did I do wrong? Over time, that kind of dynamic becomes exhausting. She wants partnership, not parenting. She wants someone who can communicate their needs directly, take responsibility for their emotions, and solve problems alongside her. This is why emotional maturity can become more attractive to her than charm. A man doesn't need to be perfect, but he needs to be capable of carrying his own emotional weight, because she's already learned how to carry hers. One of the biggest lessons experience can teach is that attraction and compatibility aren't the same thing. You can have incredible chemistry with someone and still be completely wrong for each other. You can think about someone constantly and still have incompatible values. You can have amazing conversations and still be unable to build a stable relationship. The Sigma female eventually begins looking beyond the initial spark. She asks, how do we handle conflict? Do our values align? Can we trust each other? Do our lifestyles actually work together? Can we respect each other's differences? The butterflies matter, but they aren't enough because chemistry can start a relationship, but compatibility determines whether it can survive. And if she has learned that lesson through experience, she becomes much less willing to confuse intensity with love. This is perhaps the simplest explanation. She doesn't view being single as failure, so she doesn't feel pressured to accept the first person who comes along. A relationship can provide companionship, affection, intimacy, security, but a bad relationship can also provide anxiety, conflict, self-doubt, emotional exhaustion, and constant compromise. If the cost becomes too high, she can walk away. This is where her independence becomes a form of protection. She isn't thinking, I need someone. She's thinking, if I can't have something healthy, I'm okay waiting. That mindset changes the dating equation. She doesn't negotiate against herself just because she's afraid of being alone. She doesn't lower every standard simply because time is passing. And she doesn't stay just because leaving would be uncomfortable. She understands something many people learn too late. Being alone can be painful for a season. Being with the wrong person can be painful every day. For some Sigma females, physical attraction is only the beginning. What keeps their attention is the mind. She wants conversations that go somewhere. Ideas, psychology, philosophy, dreams, goals, human behavior, the future. The things people rarely discuss on a first date. She wants someone who makes her think. Someone who can challenge her perspective without trying to dominate her. Someone who is curious. Someone who can disagree without becoming defensive. Someone who can sit in silence without making the silence uncomfortable. And this can make dating difficult because surface-level compatibility can be everywhere. Deep compatibility is much rarer. She may meet many people she finds attractive, but very few who genuinely stimulate her mind. And once she experiences that kind of connection, she becomes even less interested in relationships that feel emotionally or intellectually shallow. Perhaps the deepest reason is this. She no longer sees marriage as proof that she has succeeded in life. She can admire marriage. She can want marriage. She can dream about building a family. But she doesn't automatically equate marital status with personal worth. Her identity isn't someone's wife. It's much bigger than that. She's a woman with her own ambitions, her own personality, her own friendships, her own dreams, her own inner world. And if marriage becomes part of that life, beautiful. But it has to add something meaningful. It can't become the entire foundation. This is why an independent woman can sometimes seem difficult to settle down. She's not necessarily rejecting commitment. She's rejecting the idea that commitment should require the disappearance of her individuality. She doesn't want to be completed. She wants to be accompanied. And there's a profound difference. So why might a Sigma female live without a husband or boyfriend? It isn't necessarily because she doesn't believe in love. It isn't necessarily because she's emotionally unavailable. And it certainly doesn't mean every independent woman secretly wants to remain single forever. Sometimes, she's simply comfortable enough with herself to wait for something genuinely compatible. Her solitude gives her perspective. Her independence gives her options. Her standards protect her peace, and her self-awareness makes her less willing to confuse attention with love. But there's an important truth here. Independence can become unhealthy too. Being self-sufficient doesn't mean never needing anyone. Human beings are social creatures. Healthy relationships can provide intimacy, support, companionship, and belonging. The goal isn't to become so independent that nobody can enter your life. The goal is to become secure enough that you can choose relationships from desire rather than desperation. But that's the real difference. The Sigma female doesn't necessarily live alone because nobody wants her. Sometimes, she lives alone because she has learned that being wanted isn't the same as being understood. She doesn't want someone simply to fill an empty space. She wants someone who genuinely belongs in the life she's built. Someone who respects her independence, challenges her mind, protects her trust, communicates honestly, and understands that love doesn't require control. Because when a woman becomes comfortable alone, she stops asking, "Who will choose me?" and starts asking, "Who is actually worth choosing?" That question changes everything. It changes how she dates, how she loves, how she sets boundaries, and ultimately, how she chooses the person who gets access to her life. Maybe that's the real psychology behind the Sigma female. She isn't running away from love. She's simply refusing to run toward the wrong version of it. And when the right person finally appears, she doesn't choose him because she couldn't live without him. She chooses him because she already knows how to live without him and still genuinely wants him there. If this video resonated with you, tell us in the comments. Would you rather be alone and peaceful or in a relationship that isn't completely right for you? And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more content about Sigma female psychology, relationships, independence, self-awareness, and personal growth. Because sometimes, the strongest relationship a woman can build first is the one she has with herself.